Ireland is often spoken of in fragments. A cliff, a castle, a song. But this island does not reveal itself in pieces. It asks to be taken slowly, edge first, with time enough for weather to change and light to soften. This is a journey around Ireland, not across it. A journey that follows the shoreline where the land meets the sea, where arrivals and departures have shaped the island's memory for centuries. Along the way, the road will bend inland at times, drawn by places that cannot be passed without pause. The distance is not great, but the accumulation is. Every mile carries layers of settlement and loss, language and silence, endurance and imagination. Cities rise and recede. Villages hold fast. The land itself seems to remember. Ireland moves at its own pace. Conversations linger. Weather interrupts. Roads curve when they could run straight. To travel here is to accept that the journey matters more than the destination. We begin at the water's edge, where the island opens outward to the world. From there, we follow its perimeter, south, west, north, and back again, listening as the landscape speaks in stone, wind, and tide. This is not a search for highlights. It is an invitation to witness the island as it unfolds. We begin where Ireland meets the world, at the edge of Dublin Bay, where the Irish Sea presses gently against the curve of the city. The journey opens with salt in the air and history underfoot. This is a shoreline that has watched arrivals and departures for more than 1,000 years. Vikings rowing in from the east, merchants bringing news from Europe, immigrant ships carrying whole lives westward. The light here is soft and changeable, a silver wash that seems to hover just above the water. Behind us rises Dublin, a city that wears its past lightly. Georgian doors line quiet streets in measured rows, their colors bright against the gray stone. The River Liffey slides calmly through the center, dividing north from south, working-class grit from literary polish. This is the city of Joyce and Yeats, of pubs where conversation matters as much as the drink, of music that spills into the street whether you ask for it or not. But this is a journey around an island, not into a single city. So we turn our eyes south, following the coastline as it bends and loosens its grip on the capital. The urban rhythm fades, replaced by long strands of beach and low cliffs where grass grows right to the edge of the sea. The road hugs the water through Wicklow, often called the Garden of Ireland. Here, the mountains press close to the coast, rising in rounded heather-covered folds. Small towns appear almost unexpectedly. Bray with its Victorian promenade. Greystones tucked neatly between sea and hill. Walkers trace cliff paths where the land drops sharply into green-blue water, and seabirds ride the wind as if it were a solid thing. A short detour inland brings us into the Wicklow Mountains themselves. Glendalough waits quietly among them, a monastic valley carved by ice and time. Two lakes sit dark and reflective beneath steep slopes, and the stone round tower rises with calm authority, as it has for over 1,000 years. Even now, the air feels hushed, as if sound itself is aware that it does not belong here. Back at the coast, the island continues to pull us southward. The sea grows wider, the beaches longer. Wexford arrives with its easy pace and maritime traditions. This is Norman country, and the layers of history stack neatly. Viking roots, medieval walls, Georgian facades. Fishing boats rock in the harbor, and the accent shifts subtly, vowels stretched by the open land. The shoreline curves westward near Waterford, Ireland's oldest city. Founded by Vikings in the 9th century, Waterford still feels outward-looking, connected by water to places far beyond the island. Crystal glass made its name here, catching light much like the river itself. As we move into the southeast, the coast becomes more dramatic. Copper cliffs rise near Bunmahon, their red-brown faces streaked with green, remnants of a 19th century mining boom, now reclaimed by grass and wind. This stretch of shore feels less visited, more exposed, shaped by weather rather than people. A short detour inland pulls us away from the sea and into one of Ireland's most complete medieval cities. Kilkenny rises gently from the River Nore, compact and self-assured. Narrow lanes curve between limestone buildings, and the city feels scaled to walking. Measured, human, deliberate. Kilkenny Castle anchors the town, its long facade stretching along the riverbank. A symbol of Norman authority that later softened into a stately home. Unlike larger cities, Kilkenny feels held together by continuity rather than expansion. Craftspeople, markets, and quiet pubs fill the spaces between churches and towers. History here is not monumental. It is woven into daily movement. Not far from Kilkenny, the land lifts suddenly, and with it rises one of Ireland's most commanding sights. The Rock of Cashel stands alone on a limestone outcrop, its towers and walls visible for miles across the plain. Kings ruled from here long before the Normans arrived. And later, the church claimed it as a seat of spiritual authority. What remains today is a dense concentration of stone, cathedral, round tower, chapel, compressed into a single, unmistakable silhouette. The view from the rock stretches wide and unobstructed, reinforcing its purpose. This was a place meant to be seen, to assert presence, to remind those below of where power once lived. From here, the journey drops back down toward the south, where Cork and the coast wait. Cork appears gradually, first as county, then as city, threading itself along the River Lea. Cork is proudly independent in spirit, a place that sees itself as Ireland's true capital, whether jokingly or not. The English market hums with life, fish, bread, voices overlapping, and the city's hills offer sudden views down into narrow streets and waterways. Just beyond Cork, another brief inland turn leads to one of Ireland's most familiar names. Blarney Castle rises from wooded grounds. Its gray stone tower wrapped in ivy and legend. Visitors climb narrow stairs to reach the famous stone, said to grant eloquence to those who kiss it. The ritual is theatrical, but the setting itself holds a real weight. Ancient walls, deep forests, and sudden quiet once you step away from the crowds. The town of Blarney sits nearby, modest and welcoming, shaped by the constant flow of travelers passing through. It understands its role and plays it well, offering a pause that feels lighter before the journey resumes. From here, the road slips south again, and Kinsale's harbor comes into view. Few places in Ireland feel as immediately welcoming. Painted houses cluster around a harbor filled with masts, and food has become something of a local religion. This is also a town shaped by conflict, where a decisive 1601 battle helped set the course of Irish history. The past here is never far away, but it sits comfortably alongside cafe tables and sailing boats. From here, the island turns fully toward the Atlantic. The water darkens, the waves lengthen, and the land grows rougher. West Cork is a place of peninsulas and inlets, where roads narrow and journeys slow. Sheep appear without warning. Villages feel rooted and resilient, shaped by both abundance and hardship. The coast fractures into fingers of land reaching toward the horizon. Mizen Head marks one of the island's great turning points, a place where cliffs drop sheer into churning water. A bridge spans the gap between land and lighthouse, suspended over air and ocean, reminding you how thin the line is between solid ground and nothing at all. Further north, the Beara Peninsula curves out into the Atlantic, quieter and less traveled than its famous neighbors. Here, stone circles sit in open fields, their original meanings lost, but their presence undeniable. The road winds past lakes that mirror the sky, and the sense of remoteness feels intentional, chosen. County Kerry announces itself gradually, then all at once. The land grows taller, the roads narrower, and the Atlantic presses closer. This is a county shaped by movement, by roads that loop rather than lead straight, by landscapes that reveal themselves mile by mile. The Ring of Kerry begins near Killarney, but it does not rush to impress. Instead, it unfolds patiently, an 8-hour circle that feels less like a route and more like a conversation with the land. Leaving Killarney, the road slips past the lakes of Killarney National Park, where still water reflects mountains almost too cleanly. Purple and green tones shift with the light, and the McGillycuddy's reeks rise sharply in the distance, home to Carrauntoohil, Ireland's highest peak. The scale here feels sudden and unmistakable. Kenmare marks the southern gateway to the Ring, a town that feels composed and welcoming. From here, the road begins to climb, twisting upward through Mall's Gap. The views widen quickly, valleys opening below, stone walls tracing the contours of the hills. Ladies' View appears almost without warning, a broad overlook where the lakes and mountains arrange themselves into something impossibly balanced. From this height, the descent toward the coast feels earned. Sneem arrives next, colorful and compact, split by a river crossed with neat stone bridges. It's the kind of place that invites a pause. Nothing dramatic, just a sense of ease. As the Ring continues westward, the Atlantic becomes a constant presence. Donegal Bay opens wide, its pale sands and clear water, backed by dunes and low hills. Causeway and Waterville follow, both facing directly into the ocean. Waterville stretches along a long, curved beach, exposed and bright, a place shaped by wind and water. Charlie Chaplin once holidayed here, drawn by its openness and calm. Further on, the road narrows again near Ballinskelligs, where the land feels older and less mediated. Stone ruins sit near the shore. And out in the water, Skellig Michael rises sharply from the sea. The island is stark and unmistakable, its ancient monastery clinging to rock in defiance of comfort and logic. Even from a distance, it commands attention. Portmagee comes next, a small harbor village where boats leave for the Skelligs when weather allows. The pace here is unhurried, dictated by tide and sky rather than schedule. The ring turns inland briefly through Valentia Island, connected by bridge and ferry. From its western edge, the view back toward the mainland reveals the full sweep of the route. Mountains, sea, and road looping together. As the drive curves north again, the landscape softens slightly. Glen Bay sits at the edge of Dingle Bay, with Ross Bay strands stretching out like a pale ribbon between sea and sky. Sheep graze above the beach, unconcerned with passing cars. Eventually, the road leads back toward Killarney, completing the circle. What lingers is not a single landmark, but accumulation. The sense that no single moment defines the Ring of Kerry. Its power lies in duration, in the way the land changes gradually, almost imperceptibly, until you realize you've been fully surrounded by it. Then comes the Dingle Peninsula, where the road narrows and the language shifts. Irish is spoken here, not as a symbol, but as daily life. Stone cottages cling to hillsides, and the Blasket Islands sit offshore, low and haunting. Once home to a tight-knit community of writers and fishermen, they now stand empty, windswept, preserved in memory and story. Slea Head Drive wraps around the peninsula's western edge, offering views across the Atlantic that feel endless. On clear days, the horizon seems impossibly far away. On gray ones, sea and sky merge into a single moving surface. Crossing the Shannon by ferry, we arrive in County Clare, where the land takes on a starker beauty. The Burren spreads across County Clare in pale stone, a landscape that appears unfinished. as if the soil has been carefully removed to reveal what lies beneath. Limestone slabs stretch outward in fractured patterns, cracked by centuries of rain and frost. From a distance, it looks barren. Up close, it reveals itself slowly. Walking here alters your sense of scale. There are few trees, few reference points. The horizon feels close, yet unreachable. Sound carries differently across the stone, and even footsteps seem hesitant, aware that this is not ground meant to be rushed. Life hides in the gaps. Wildflowers bloom in narrow crevices. Orchids, gentians, delicate growth, thriving where it should not. The Burren holds contradictions. Arctic plants growing alongside Mediterranean species. Fragile color emerging from unforgiving rock. Ancient structures rest easily in this place. Portal tombs, ring forts, and stone walls sit low against the land, as if they rose from it rather than being built upon it. Powell Nabrone Dolmen stands exposed against the sky, its massive capstone balanced with impossible precision. It has stood here for thousands of years, unprotected, unguarded, and undisturbed. The Burren does not guide you with roads or signs. It asks for attention. To cross it is to slow down, to read the land rather than pass through it. There is a sense that time behaves differently here, that the usual divisions between past and present have thinned. By the time the stone gives way to grass again, the eye has adjusted. The land behind you feels quietly monumental, not because of height or drama, but because of endurance. It prepares you for what comes next, where the stone no longer lies flat, but rises suddenly and without compromise into the Atlantic air. At the edge of County Clare, the land simply ends. The Cliffs of Moher rise in a long, unwavering line, stretching for miles along the Atlantic. From above, they appear solid and immovable, but standing there, the scale is immediately disorienting. The ground beneath your feet feels stable, yet the drop is absolute. Sheer rock, falling hundreds of feet into restless water below. The Atlantic does not rush here. It moves with weight and intention. Waves break far beneath the cliffs, reduced to pale lines that dissolve almost as soon as they appear. Sound travels strangely in this open space. Wind pressing past your ears, the distant impact of water against stone arriving moments after you expect it. There is a quiet tension in standing at the edge. Your body becomes aware of itself. Balance, breath, distance. The horizon stretches uninterrupted, and the sense of separation between land and sea feels both sharp and fragile. On clear days, the Aran Islands appear offshore, low and steady, as if floating just beyond reach. Weather defines the experience. Sunlight can transform the cliffs into warm bands of brown and gold. Fog can erase them almost entirely, reducing everything to wind and whiteness. Even in crowds, the place holds its gravity. Conversations soften. People stand still longer than they intend to. The cliffs do not ask for belief or explanation. They offer perspective. Standing there, the island feels finite and complete, and the ocean feels vast beyond measure. It is a moment that resists photography, asking instead to be remembered. When we finally turn away, the land behind us feels quieter, almost relieved. The road carries us onward, but the sensation of that edge lingers, of having stood briefly where Ireland meets the infinite. Nearby villages like Dublin hum with music in the evenings. Fiddles and flutes fill low-ceilinged rooms, and strangers become temporary friends over shared tables. This is not performance, it is continuation. Leaving Clare behind, the road bends north toward Galway. And with it comes a subtle change in energy. The land remains rugged, but the spirit grows livelier. Galway has long been a gateway between worlds, the English-speaking East and the Irish-speaking West. Commerce and culture, tradition and reinvention. The city itself feels young despite its age. Narrow streets wind toward the River Corrib. Musicians play beneath shop fronts, and conversation drifts easily between strangers. Spanish arches mark the old trading links with Europe, reminders that this western city has always faced outward as much as inward. A short distance inland lies Loch Corrib, Ireland's second largest lake. Its islands scattered like punctuation marks across the water. Stone castles sit low along its shores, blending almost seamlessly into the landscape. The sense here is not of grandeur, but of endurance. Beyond Galway, Connemara opens up, and Ireland becomes elemental. This is a place defined by bog, mountain, and sea, by space more than settlement. Roads cut thin lines through peatlands, and stone walls crisscross hills that appear empty until you look closer. The 12 bends rise sharply, their quartzite peaks catching light differently than the softer hills elsewhere on the island. Weather moves fast here. Sun breaks through clouds in sudden dramatic bursts, illuminating lakes that appear and vanish again in minutes. Kylemore Abbey sits quietly at the base of a wooded slope, its reflection steady in the lake below. Built as a private home in the 19th century, it later became a place of refuge and learning. The surrounding gardens feel almost improbable in such a raw landscape, yet they thrive, sheltered and precise. Along the coast, small villages like Roundstone and Clifton hold fast against the Atlantic wind. Irish is spoken casually, without ceremony. This is not a performance of culture. It is simply life as it continues. As we cross into County Mayo, the land widens and thins at the same time. There is more space here, and fewer people. Fields stretch toward distant hills, and the roads feel less certain of where they are going. Croagh Patrick rises with quiet authority from the shores of Clew Bay. Its shape unmistakable against the western sky. Nearly symmetrical, it lifts cleanly from the surrounding land, a solitary cone framed by water and low islands. Even from a distance, it draws the eye, and closer in, it draws something more internal. This is Ireland's most important pilgrimage mountain. For centuries, people have climbed Croagh Patrick, not for views alone, but for meaning. According to tradition, St. Patrick fasted on its summit for 40 days in the 5th century, mirroring the biblical trials of Christ. From that height, it is said, he banished serpents from the island, an image that has endured whether taken literally or symbolically. Each year, on the last Sunday of July, known as Reek Sunday, thousands of pilgrims make the ascent. Some climb barefoot, some in silence, some carrying personal intentions that are never spoken aloud. The path is steep and loose, a shifting surface of stone that demands attention with every step. This is not a casual walk. It is meant to test resolve. As the climb continues, Clew Bay slowly unfolds below. Hundreds of small islands scatter across the water, their shapes softened by distance and light. Wind presses harder near the top, and the air grows thinner, sharper. At the summit, a small chapel stands exposed, offering little shelter and no grandeur, only presence. Standing there, the feeling is not triumph so much as clarity. The climb strips away distraction. Breath becomes rhythm. Effort becomes focus. Whether approached as faith, tradition, or endurance, Croagh Patrick offers something rare. A shared act, repeated across generations, unchanged by time. Descending, the mountain releases its hold slowly. The path remains demanding, the stones shifting beneath tired legs. But below, the land opens again, and the mountain settles back into its place, watching over the bay, unchanged, waiting. Achill Island, connected to the mainland by a short bridge, feels like another step outward. Cliffs rise high above beaches of pale sand, and abandoned villages speak quietly of famine and departure. Clew Bay curves almost impossibly between steep slopes, a moment of softness at the island's edge. Donegal is a county apart, politically part of the Republic, but geographically leaning into the north. It feels both connected and isolated. The land here is dramatic in a way that demands attention. Slieve League's cliffs rise higher than those of Moher, though they are far less visited. Narrow paths trace the edge, and the Atlantic spreads endlessly below. There are places here where the road simply stops, and the land decides what happens next. Galway National Park offers a different mood. Quiet lakes, deer moving through valleys. It feels remote, protected, and deeply calm. Villages like Ardara and Glencolumkill hold on to music and craft traditions, especially weaving, with pride and practicality. This is not nostalgia. It is continuity. As the coastline curves eastward, the Atlantic gives way to narrower seas. Northern Ireland enters the journey not as a rupture, but as another layer of the island's story. Derry, or Londonderry, stands enclosed by its intact city walls, offering views over the River Foyle. Its history is complex and recent, marked by conflict and resilience. Yet today, the city feels open, reflective, and quietly determined. Further east, the Antrim Coast Road traces one of the most scenic drives in Europe. Cliffs fall away into the sea, villages cling to narrow strips of land, and the water shifts from deep blue to soft gray. The Giant's Causeway appears almost unreal. Hexagonal columns stepping down into the sea, shaped by volcanic force and wrapped in myth. Science explains its formation, but explanation does not lessen its impact. Belfast rises at the end of the loch, a city reshaped by reinvention. Once defined by shipbuilding and division, it now feels creative and forward-looking. The Titanic Quarter stands where the great liner was built, a reminder of ambition and consequence. Leaving the north, the coast softens once more. County Down offers gentle hills and long beaches, with the Mourne Mountains rising quietly inland. Towns feel familiar again, accents shifting back toward the rhythms we heard at the start. As we re-enter the Republic, the Irish Sea widens, and the sense of a completed circle begins to form. Fishing villages dot the coast, and the road feels increasingly well-worn. Eventually, Dublin Bay opens once more. The water is calmer here, the light softer. The city reappears not as a destination, but as a return. The island now feels known, not fully understood, but encountered. Its edges traced, its heart glimpsed. Ireland reveals itself slowly, never all at once, rewarding patience and presence. And as with all journeys around an island, the end feels less like a conclusion and more like an invitation to linger, to return, and to keep listening to the land as it continues to speak. Thank you for watching. If you like this journey around Ireland and would like to see more travel documentaries like this, click like and subscribe.